welcome to part 2 of the PBL Bootcamp that the Program for Faculty Development is putting together. This is the second of the PBL Bootcamps, and we're going to be talking about thriving in a virtual problem-based tutorial or problem-based learning environment. Today's session is brought to you by 3 individuals, including myself. So we've got Justine Hamilton, Maria Pratt, and myself, Sarah Lau, who are going to be leading the session. And we're very, very excited for you to be part of today's activities with us. So in terms of the folks in the room, I think that a few of you did attend this session. Yes, not yesterday, a few weeks ago, last week, I think. Time is really blending together. But I think I saw a few familiar faces, a few familiar names. However, I also recognize that some of the individuals who are here with us today did not attend the session on problem-based learning last time. And so this is a boot camp. This is the second session of the bootcamp. However, we don't expect you to attend every single one of these. But just to make sure that we're all on the same page, we did want to start just by showcasing what exactly it is that that problem-based learning is. And so problem-based tutorials or problem-based learning is a method of teaching through cases that many of the programs within Faculty of Health Sciences employ. And really all this is bringing to the learners different cases through which they can learn by example what it is that they may anticipate within the clinical setting when they do go into practice, into clerkship or into practice later on in their careers. So typically when we start up with a problem-based learning tutorial or any kind of a session, we have a case, we read through the case together, and then we start off by clarifying terms or words in the scenario or the case that are not fully understood by the group. And we make sure that we have the same baseline understanding. Then once we actually all understand the language in which the case or the scenario is being described, then we start to define the problems at hand. So typically it's a clinical scenario of some sort, and so there are certain conditions that need to be diagnosed, certain team dynamics that need to be resolved, and so we need to define so that everyone's on the same page for what exactly needs to be addressed. After this, we go through a brainstorming exercise. So understand a little bit of the information that we need to dig into further to understand the case at hand and be able to resolve the problem. We structured some kind of a hypothesis, so different things that we need to again look into. Typically, this is the point at which we break off until the next session or employ a little bit of our own research or our own kind of conceptual understanding from other courses or other programs that we've taken. We bring all the knowledge together either next time or when we bring everything back to the group. And then once we actually go and do that, then we bring all the information back. We start to talk about the problem again. We bring all our learnings together, and then we're able to resolve the case at hand. Okay, so really, fundamentally, it's about problem understanding, bringing everyone onto the same page when it comes to that, going off, taking our time to bring together knowledge that will be useful to the group and to ourselves, and then we bring everything together in the group environment, and we work through the case to solve it, with everyone hopefully coming in with slightly different information to be able to build off of each other, to be able to create a shared understanding or a shared framework of how exactly we would resolve that case. And that case, again, is generalizable enough that we can employ the same tactics, the same strategies to future problems that we may experience or encounter during our clerkships or our clinical rotations or our professional kind of lives. So with that, I am going to pass it off to Justine, who is going to be talking to us a little bit about the technologies that are typically employed with the virtual setting. And then we'll continue on through talking about the social dynamics that are really important for us to consider in this PBL environment, especially in a virtual realm. And then we're going to be breaking off into cases. So Justine, if you are ready, I'm going to switch it over to you.
All right. So, that was a quick overview of just what is problem-based learning, problem-based tutorials, in general in the in-person world. And if you didn't attend last week's session, you'll probably find it interesting to look for the recording once it gets posted on the MacPFD site, because it looked like a totally awesome session. And I was scanning through some of it and learning stuff myself, so it was great. But today what we're going to do is talk about how we transition that into the virtual world. Some things transition very easily and some things are a little more difficult. So what I'm going to start with is just some of the nuts and bolts, some of the boring technology side of things that you just have to make sure you have a comfort level with, and then Maria and Sarah get all the fun stuff later. But we'll try and make the technology side of things fun as well. So we'll go over the platforms, talk a little bit about how we manage safety and privacy in the virtual world. Those are key elements in an effective group, and also just talk about some general tips. These are the symbols that you'll see. We're on Zoom right now, and Teams is the other main platform that gets used throughout the Faculty of Health Sciences. WebEx is another platform, probably less commonly used, seeing as McMaster has licenses with Zoom and Teams. WebEx today pretty much looks identical to Zoom, so I'm not going to show you any screenshots from WebEx, but everything you see for Zoom, if you happen to have a group running on WebEx, everything you're seeing on Zoom will probably apply. So horrific screenshots of myself when I was taking these to show just some of the features of Zoom. So you're in Zoom right now. When you join the Zoom meeting for a problem-based tutorial, you might have a passcode associated with it. And if you do, at the top of the screen, that'll be where you enter it and you click Join Meeting. So that's nice and straightforward. If you look at your own Zoom screen right now, you will see that there's a microphone to turn on and off, and there's a little arrow next to that microphone, and that's where you can test your audio. And audio often goes wrong because of different microphones, or you have one microphone plugged in versus the base microphone. And as soon as you click on the little arrow next to the mute, the microphone symbol, you can test your audio, and it will pretty much make it almost impossible to not figure out what's going on. So feel free to click on the little arrow and just see, it'll tell you which microphone you're using. Same thing with the video button. Next to the video button, there's a little arrow, and you can see which camera you're drawing from if you've got more than one camera, etc. There are handy little settings on the video to change your background and all that kind of stuff, which we won't go into today, but there are a lot of settings you can do with video. I can put myself wearing a red beret if I want, looking like a pirate. There's lots of fun settings there if you want to have some fun with your students. One thing, if you look on your own little image tile right now, so if you just find where you are on the screen, there will be 3 little dots. And so this is what I've got highlighted up here. And those 3 little dots will let you do a few things. You can rename yourself. So if you're using a computer that other people use, you can rename yourself. So this is especially important when you're first connecting with a new Zoom group to make sure you've got your proper name displayed. The big one that I really like is the hide self-view function. And what this does is hides the view of yourself. And so what I have found is if the picture of yourself is up, your eyes constantly get distracted by yourself. It's not a normal situation where if you're sitting around a table, you're not looking at yourself, you're looking at everybody else in the group. So I always click on hide self-view to take myself out of the image of what I'm looking at. And I find it actually improves focus, reduces cognitive resources. You can switch, there's a little button you can click on. It's usually near where the pictures of people are, or in the top right that says view, and you can switch between speaker view and gallery view. So you can either just look at one person or look at the whole group. If it's a small group in PBT, you probably want to see the whole group at the same time. And so gallery view is usually what you want to be on. And the other thing that I find particularly handy is to exit from full screen. So if you, it's usually again in the view area, and you find exit full screen, and what that does is it takes Zoom down to just be one window on your computer. So if you want to see something else that is also up on your computer. Shrink the Zoom window, make it big enough that you can see the people or the PowerPoint, whatever you're looking at, but you can still click around in other windows at the same time. When you've got Zoom on full screen, then that's all you see. Like right now, I've got it on full screen, so all I see is my slides. But if I had something else I wanted to click over to, then having it not in full screen mode gives you that opportunity to click around. The chat function, I think most of you already know because I saw a whole bunch of things coming in chat, but you just click on the little speech bubble at the bottom and you can use chat there. And I'm going to show you these functions in a second, same with the share screen. So you'll see at the top, the chat appears to the right of your screen. You click on the chat to bring it up and you click on the little close arrow at the top to get rid of it. What you might find in PBT is that some programs will disable the private chat. Oh, I can see somebody's posting chat, practicing out there. Hello, nice to meet you, Christine. So I know in the speech pathology program, we disable the private chat function. In-person PBT, we strongly discourage sidebar conversations so that me and someone else are sitting here having a conversation off to the side, whereas the rest of the group is talking about the case. And in the virtual world, that's what happens in private chat. You can have two people having their own conversation and not participating. So we disable private chat, but the chat window is still used for posting agenda items or video links, etc. So just something to be aware of when you talk with your program that you're tutoring for to see is private chat disabled or not. When you go to share your screen, you click on the little green share screen button that's you'll usually find at the bottom of your screen, and you'll have a bunch of choices. Just be aware the top left one shares whatever you've got on your screen at the time. So if you've got slides up and you show your slides, and then you click over to a web browser, you click over to a Word document, whatever you have will show there. If you don't want to risk showing something on your computer that isn't there, A, shut everything else down, but B, you can select from the next rows if there's just something in particular you want. So if I only wanted to show my slides and if I click away from my slides to something else, the rest of the group can't see it, that is where you select it from. But in general, you can just click on the top left one. And finally, down at the bottom, there's share sound and optimize for video clips. So if you think you're going to be sharing audio or video, make sure you check those buttons to optimize how it transmits over Zoom. This is Teams. And again, it's got very similar symbols, very similar features. It's got fewer features than Zoom, but they all sort of work basically the same way. And I've highlighted some of the main ones. The chat is the same. You've got the little speech bubble to bring the chat up. You've got, the usual things for turning your video on and off, your microphone on and off, your sharing screen, etc. So Teams looks very similar. The benefit to Teams, if you're using it in PBT, is you've got associated document storage, which might be handy for sharing an article with everybody. The downside is there are fewer meeting options within Teams. You can't fiddle with your audio and video as much. So, but very, very similar at this point. In terms of troubleshooting, I always say, keep calm, carry on. Usually your students will solve the problem for you. It's amazing what they know. And so between having access to your course coordinator, because you'll probably have a cell phone number of someone to contact, and the students, they know everything about these platforms. And so if you can't solve it and your course coordinator isn't available, your students are probably going to be able to solve it for you. Like in the hardwired computer world, if something's not working, we say unplug and replug to solve things. In the Zoom world, it's disconnect and reconnect. So it's the same basic idea. If something's not working, try disconnecting, reconnecting, and magically it often solves itself. And I always say to students, and this will probably change over time, but in the past year, if students are finding things frustrated, I just say, you know what, this is good practice because you're going to be doing this likely in your working world at some point. You're going to be doing it on a placement, you're going to be doing it in the working world. So let's use this as an opportunity to figure it out. Can you disable the chat in Teams? I don't actually know the answer to that question. Does anybody know if you can disable private chat in Teams?
No idea.
No idea. Okay,
Mhm.
so there we've got something to learn. I actually, I'm not a big fan of using Teams for these meetings, so I haven't investigated. So I'm sorry, I don't know the answer.
I can ask you kids later, Sarah. I mean, and just
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. So safety issues. Now, this is something that hopefully you will never, ever need to worry about. But we had it happen not long after we switched to virtual PBT last summer, is that there was a tutor with a group of students, and one of the students suddenly became very gray and non-responsive, still upright, there, but just something changed. And there was that moment of panic because you think, oh my gosh, what do? I don't know where this person is. I don't know if there's anyone in the house, etc. Normally you call 911 and you give them an address. Well, we have no addresses. So this is when the university started looking at what should we be providing guidance on in terms of safety. So one thing we've said is see if any of the students are comfortable providing their emergency contact and location information, either to you as the tutor or to another student in the group in case they become ill. Something also, determine a signal for needing to leave the meeting unexpectedly, but you're okay. So that suddenly you need to run because there's a pot on fire on the stove, but you're fine. Like, to figure out when you're talking about the ground rules, if there's a signal, just to say, yep, I'm disconnecting for a second, but I'm okay. If it's a non-urgent situation, the student is just struggling, of course, refer to the Student Wellness Center on campus. But if it's an urgent situation, then you're going to call 911 or get somebody else on the call to do that. Keep the person who's in distress on the call with you. If you don't already have it, see if they can give you their current address or phone number and any other information to give to the people on 911. And anyone who's not involved in providing support, just get them to disconnect from the Zoom call out of privacy and respect for the individual. So the likelihood is, and the student that we had the issue with, everything was completely fine. It all ended well. It was just, there was that momentary panic of, oh my gosh, what do I do when I'm not physically in the same room as somebody? So these are just some tips to keep handy for that. Privacy is another thing. When we're in person, we're in a room with a closed door. But with Zoom, I could be sitting anywhere. And so we've added something in the speech program to our handbooks, just making sure it's clear that these are private. These are private classes, just like they are in person. And so if your program is recording the classes due to, in case there are technical issues, to make sure that they should not be distributed. You shouldn't have your family members hanging out as part of PBT, because everyone is curious about PBT, and it'd be great to have your mom and dad, your spouse present to see how these things work. But that's not, you wouldn't do that in an in-person PBT, and you shouldn't do it here either. We need to make sure it's safe and comfortable for all students. So some of the tips we've said is close the door if you're in a room with a closed door. Make sure your monitor is positioned away from the door. So if someone walks by, they're not seeing what's going on the monitor. Wear headphones so that, if any of you were to speak right now, I would hear you, but no one else in my household would hear you. I've got the private chat issue there. Something, because screen sharing does happen a lot in our PBT groups, make sure nothing else is open on your screen that you don't want anyone else to see. Everyone has email open, right? And so then you click on screen share and voila, there's your email open to the world to see. And so of course, everyone's like, oh gosh, what are those subject lines? Are these things of interest? And so make sure everything is closed that you don't want anyone else to see. And if you are recording sessions, make sure that there are rules in place and that everybody is following the rules. Just some general virtual survival skills. Make sure you've got a strong Wi-Fi signal, or try to be hardwired if you can. Because depending on the time of day, the Zoom bandwidth can be low, and playing videos, if you're sharing a screen, playing videos can hog up a lot of the bandwidth and they may not transmit well. So if you or your group want to share a video, try, if it's a YouTube, something with a link, put the link into chat and have everybody click on the link themselves so that they're watching the Zoom video the YouTube video or what have you outside of the Zoom session, and then that doesn't shut down all the bandwidth resources within Zoom. limit visual distraction. So I already talked about the hide self view. Be aware of motion. Like, it's amazing. I was realized how much I move around when I'm sitting in a chair. And it doesn't take a lot of motion to really start getting distracted, even though it doesn't seem like a lot of motion to me. Before I wore headphones, I always had dangly earrings. And it was amazing how the dangly earrings could be annoying. So be careful about motion. Pay attention to your camera angle, your camera distance, your lighting. You don't want to be too close to the camera. You don't want to be too far away. As you get to be my age, you really don't want it looking up at your chin. So just pay attention to some of those features. Try and look at the camera when speaking. This is something what I find when I was talking about reducing the exiting full screen so that you can control the size of your Zoom window. What I will often do, because my camera's at the top of my monitor, is I will move all my people up to the top of the monitor so I can look at everyone's faces while looking at the camera. And that helps me keep focused on the camera, and it looks like I'm maintaining eye contact a lot better than if you were down here at the lower bottom part of the screen. I really like using my headphone and microphone combo to limit auditory distraction. My husband's watching a chess video right now, and it would be rather annoying to have to listen to that. Be careful with multitasking. If there's a discussion going on and I just grab my phone to quickly check some emails, you can tell. You can totally tell when I'm checking my phone. And the reality is, if you've tutored before, you know how quickly that discussion can evolve and build in depth, and you don't want to miss even 30 seconds of it. So really avoid the temptation to multitask, because it's so easy to fall into that trap in the electronic world. I recommend, I'm not a 2-monitor person. I struggle with 2 monitors, so I've got a big honking monitor to fit as much as I can on. But there's a lot of information to view. If you've got notes that you're taking or something that you're going to be sharing on the screen, plus all the people, there's a lot to view, and you need it to be as big as possible. And I therefore print some stuff, print the healthcare problem to keep in front of me so that it's not on my screen. I've got one of these Remarkable tablets, free promo for Remarkable, so I can handwrite notes on how the students are doing, and then upload them via PDF or what later. Just something to get it all off the screen, so there's some paper or paper equivalent in front. It is hard to have a lot of things up on the screen. And when you first do it, just stay chilled. Be easy on yourselves. You will find that it's really tiring. It's really cognitively demanding trying to do PBT virtually for the first couple of weeks. And so when you're meeting with other tutors, feel free to share your frustrations, ask for tips and tricks, because everybody's been there and it is not easy. And so keep your expectations low for those first couple of weeks if you're struggling with having different things open and moving things around and making sure audio and video and everything is working. That's okay. That's exactly normal, and that's totally fine. That's the end of the nuts and bolts side of things. Now I'm going to hand it over to Maria to talk about the fun social stuff.